Yeah.
This is Geek Therapy Radio.
What are we waiting for?
And now your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger.
Welcome to Geek Therapy Radio. I'm your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger, and like I've said so many times before on this show, I am twitching my britches because of today's guest. I'm so excited. I've been trying to get a hold of her for a while, and I know a lot of you are fans of hers, so I finally have her, and it's so great to have her on. Lights, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. That was like an awesome intro. I feel like I hope I don't let you down.
So how many radio interviews have you done? Let's just say last year.
Oh, like a round number? Who? Maybe in the maybe 100?
Yeah.
Not that bad. Yeah, like 100
yeah,
in the last year.
I'm surprised it's not like 10 times more than that, because there's one thing that I don't really, since I'm in radio and I've taken calls from different people and artists along the line. I was talking to, you know who Jim Jeffries is? Is his name Jim Jeffries? No. Who am I thinking of? It's a comedian, and he was doing the radio rounds, and this was like 6 a.m. one morning, and he was in a different time zone, and I'm like, dude, I don't envy this part of the gig at all, waking up at 5 a.m. and then talking to 10 different radio stations. So how do you...
you know what? I will say, like, of all the radio station interviews I've done, this is the first one that's about what yours is about, and I love that.
Absolutely.
But of course, I have fun talking all the time. I mean, listen, I get to talk about myself for a living. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy. I don't have to research it, right? You
know what? That actually works out best for me, because I'm decent at talking. I can probably talk for 45 minutes straight, but the more you talk, the easier my job is. I can just kind of set you up and then...
Oh, don't get me in my zone. Don't get me in my zone.
Well, I'm trying to get you in your zone here. So let's start with music. I know a lot of people already know who you are, but Lights, how would you describe your music, and how long have you been doing it?
Well, I have 4 records out. Probably been doing music professionally for 10 years. And my music is like, I always call it like left of center electric pop. It's electronic pop. So it's like, it's not like, I always like to do things a little bit differently than the things that I hear, whether that's with the instrumentation or production or the vocal style or the things that I'm singing about or lyrics. So, yeah, I mean, it's essentially just pop. That's what I tell the border agent when I go over the border. Like, what kind of music do you do? I'm like, pop.
Do you have any?
Let's not make it complicated.
Do you have any pop in your car, ma'am? Yeah, let me bust it out.
Yeah, I got tons of pop to show you.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think, for years, I think people thought pop was such a dirty word, but I'm proud to be a pop artist. I love pop music. And I think we all love pop culture. We celebrate pop culture. And that's the whole point of what the style of music is. Music that can reach lots of people. So, yeah, I have a lot of fun with it.
I think I can already tell you might be a little bit like me in this area, in that sometimes, like, I listen to, I feel like listening to one Michael Jackson song, and then I just go on these tangents. I listen to Michael Jackson for like weeks at a time. Does that ever happen to you?
You can. He has so many songs.
I know, because you can listen. You can listen for weeks at a time. That's what I'm saying. I just go off on these tangents, like these different. It's like floating down a river of Michael Jackson music. I'll just listen to one song. I'll just listen to Thriller, and by the end of it, I'm listening to History and every single one of his other albums and every single one of his songs.
That literally happens to me all the time.
Man in the mirror. But yeah, so.
Oh, emotional. That's an emotional one.
It is. Well, there's so much emotional. We could probably do a whole segment just talking about.
I've always thought you could have a Michael Jackson radio station that literally just played Michael Jackson songs, and you'd always turn it on and there'd be something fresh, because he's got such a vast discography.
Yeah.
And so many live versions. And I don't know if you've ever looked up like live Michael Jackson videos, but quite literally, they're twice as fast live. Like,
really?
He plays them insanely fast live. And it's pretty amazing to see, because he's on key, they're dancing, they're moving, and I'm just like, you listen to the original again, and it sounds like a completely different song.
But
faster, pick it up.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's nuts. So I forgot that you actually, one of my favorite artists, and of course not ashamed to say this, because when I first heard Fireflies, I was like, why is this in my head so much? I love this. You have worked with Adam Young and Owl City, right?
Yeah, years ago we toured together in 2010 for like 6 months in a row. One of the longest tours I ever went on, and we've collabed back and forth a few times. I sang on one of his songs, and he sang on one of mine. And it's funny. He's such a smart sort of like internal genius, but like I don't think we've actually ever spent a day together. So all of our collaborations have essentially been, even though we toured together for so long, our collaborations and our interactions are mostly just online and from a distance. It's funny. Yeah. I love that about the music industry.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, the only place I was going with that is to see if you still keep in touch with him at all, or if there's anything else coming up.
No, not recently. I actually haven't spoken to him in a few years, but he's been fairly like low-key releasing stuff, not like, I don't think he ever really enjoyed, I don't want to speak for him, but I don't think he ever really enjoyed touring.
Right.
He's kind of like I said, likes to sit and create music and sort of work behind the scenes, and I think that's kind of, it seems like, what he's been doing. Yeah.
So speaking of working on music and behind the scenes, one of your biggest fans in the entire known universe and unknown universe was one of my good friends, James, and he's like, "Oh, ask her all these." He's like, "Ask if you want to say hi, James." That blow his mind.
Hi, James.
Yeah. So
where's that?
So he sent me this list. I'm not going to read this whole list because I know your time is limited. But he's like, "Ask her all these questions about whatever." But the main focus was about songwriting. And so I'm just going to kind of segue this into a question that might help. There's probably a lot of songwriters listening to this. I make music myself. I've been doing it for years. I remember way back, like when you're 31, I'm 35. I'm about to turn 35. How old are you? 31. So you remember back, like the early days of the internet, I was kind of a teenager and everything, and I remember going on to Google way back then and Googling how to write music.
Oh, it's a good question.
It is a good question, and it's kind of an intangible thing. So back to James's main questions, and it's going to help a lot of people out there listening right now. What advice would in your experience, do you think you have to give to aspiring songwriters? Where to begin, or how did you go about that, and how might that help other people?
Well, it comes in stages, obviously, but probably the number one thing about writing songs is actually learning an instrument. I think it's a place to start. Although I will say I wrote multiple songs before I actually learned any instruments, and just kind of wrote them down and remembered how they went. But yeah, learn an instrument, and especially, it's 2018, we have all the tools in front of us to start recording ourselves. Yeah. So go pick up Pro Tools or buy Logic. It's like on the App Store, right? Yeah. And you can create a finished product with that. So just start creating. And you don't have to be the world's best musician to put a song together on Logic. That's called being a producer. Right. A lot of producers actually aren't great musicians, but they know what sounds good and know how to build and layer and arrange music. And I, for one, love to use all of those things and build music from there. So use the tools that are in front of you. That's my biggest advice for people. I mean, even, 15 years ago when I was just getting started, there was no MySpace at that point. Yeah. And there weren't like, I had an 8-track. It was like a physical 8-track that recorded to zip disk. And this is only 15 years ago. Like, I'm talking, the world has changed so much in the time that I've been doing music professionally, and it's a hell of a lot easier now to make music and put it out there for the world than it used to be. Yeah. So do it, Yeah. Like, it's all there to use. And I think one of the common mistakes people make when they first start making music is they write one song and then want that to be their song, and they want to put that out. You should never be that precious with it. I think you should love your music and you should care for it, but part of nurture and part of growth is being able to know when it's trash, because the first 100 songs you write are going to be trash. At least the first 1,000 songs I wrote were probably trash. But move on. You got to it's practice. It's a muscle. You just keep writing. Do a ton, and when you have something you're really proud of, then put it out there. You have all the platforms at your disposal.
Yes, and something I would still say that if I have 20 or so songs that I would show the world that I think are like, wow, where did that come from? That are pretty good, and to me, and I guess me, that's all that matters. But a lot of people say, man, you should.
That's your taste.
Exactly. But so what I'm saying is I have, a few dozen songs that I think are really good. Like, where did those come from? But for every one song that's good, I have written or made, 50, 60, 100 more that were bad. And sometimes you get super inspired and you get through the first few verses or first few phrases or whatever, and then you just kind of lose. You lose
momentum.
Right, you lose the momentum, and I find in those cases, I want your opinion on it. In those cases, I step away from it when I feel like I've lost the momentum. I step away from it almost immediately, and then I'll come back to it fresh later on. And early on, when I was writing songs, I would try to find the momentum again, like in that session. And what wound up happening is I would just get so disenchanted with it and so frustrated with it, I would never come back to the song. Versus recognizing, the first 15 seconds of the song are really good. I need to come back when I have the next, 2.5 minutes finished, rather than getting burned out on the first.
Brain works wonders when you're reapproaching music. And then this is something I've learned over the years too. Yeah, you can't sit down and burn out all your creativity, especially even in one form of art. I've learned to branch out into different forms of art. I think there's been, in the past, there's like this stigma on artists to only do one thing. Like, you're a musician, that's all you know how to do, stick with it,
Yeah.
But art within humanity, it comes in so many different forms. And if you're good at one type of art, chances are you're going to want to dabble in other kinds of art too, and chances are you'll be pretty good at it too.
Yes.
So work those muscles equally as the other ones, and they'll all contribute back to each other. Like with this new project I have, I put out a comic with it.
Yes.
And the comic ties in with the music. And
perfect segue.
I drew and wrote the whole thing, and that became such an important part of creating the record, because if I, was working on a song that was frustrating, I put that away, and I'm going to go write some of the story now. And that story kind of transports me somewhere else. When I get stuck on a part of a story, move on to the art. These are all three different, really extremely different art forms that don't feel like you're doing the other one at all, but you're still building your creative muscle, and you're still creating and contributing to the process as a whole.
And you find inspiration for other avenues of art from different avenues of art. You might be working on your comic, and then you're like, that gives me a good song idea, and vice versa. What is the name of your comic, by the way?
It's called Skin and Earth, and that's the same as the album as well. So it's like all sort of part of the same multimedia, super augmented experience project. It's the graphic novel actually just came out a couple weeks ago, and it's the first time all of the issues of the comic, which is 6 in total, have been compiled. And it's so cool because like each chapter page, if you scan a QR code, it'll take you to that music. So each chapter is a song.
That's
and
cool.
If there's a music video, it'll bring that up. If there's merch that's like straight off the comic pages, it'll come up when you scan the code too. Literally, it's like the coolest project I've ever been part of, little and seen, little and created, right? It's cool.
Yeah, that is so cool. And I'll, of course, I have all the links below the podcast, and I'll put up all on the radio station blog and everything. Get you eyeballs and clicks on all that good stuff. Real quick before, I know your time is short, but real quick before we go on to some other meat and potatoes, have you ever heard a song? This happened to me recently, and I'll send Ashley's that her name, maybe forward it to you.
Yeah.
But I woke up from a dead sleep with a song in my head that I immediately was able to put into reality. Has that ever happened to you? It's super convenient when that happens.
That is convenient. I will say I've had dreams before where in the dream I wrote this song that I loved, and I woke up and I couldn't remember it.
Oh.
And the only time I ever remembered it was I was randomly in Hong Kong for a few days and passing between like the Philippines and here, and killing a few days there. And I woke up in the middle of the night with this dream about a song that was incredible. And I went in the bathroom and sang it into the phone. Went back to sleep, tried to listen to it the next day, and I was like, what is this garbage? So it sounds so much better in your head and in your dreams than it really is. But I can't say that's ever happened to me. I think I track ideas all the time, and it's funny, in my voice memos on my phone, I name them by like where they were, where I was when I came up with the idea. So it's like airport bathroom,
and then the date
at Walmart,
Right, and then the date. I always date it too to remember when I thought about that.
I think it's automatically on the file, so it's like you gotta like scroll back because it's all in chronological order.
Yeah.
But so in that sense, I get a lot of ideas in spur of the moment. Like there's a song on my new record called Savage, and I was driving in traffic to that session that day, and the entire chorus came out. Because I knew having the comic and the concept and the story to guide the songwriting process was a really fun experience. It actually really helped direct what I was going to write about. So I knew I needed this angry song, and it's something that I've been wanting to write about for a while. And so in the car, in traffic, of course, I just ripped the whole chorus into my phone and went into session, and immediately that song existed because it just poured out. So yeah, that can happen, and it is very convenient, I will say.
That brings a smile to my face hearing about that, because it's such a good, satisfying, oh man, because that's our hunt, that's the hunt, is to create and put something in the universe. So then when you have something really good that's really flowing and really nice, it's like a gift. It feels like a gift to me whenever that happens. And so when it happens to you and you can put that goodness out there. How much do you have? A few more minutes to get into some meat and potatoes real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
all right.
Like going on the topic you're talking about, like it's so true. Like being able to create and make something that people hear and enjoy, and that's contributing to entertainment, right? And it kind of hit me the other day. I found out we've been working on this for a little while, but I just announced that my comic is being adapted for television. I signed a deal with Entertainment One.
What?
Yeah, so we're working on that.
That's awesome.
And it's kind of funny, like watching something that you just pulled out of the air.
Yes.
Become something bigger, right? And that's the beauty of art. It's nothing until you make it something.
Yes.
And that's the power that you have.
Yes. That's very beautiful. I'm bringing myself back down to earth now, because I'm thinking about pulling all the art out of the ether and then putting it out back into the universe. It's like it's been entrusted to you. It's like, here's some random stuff. Here's some random beautiful things. You put it through your spaghetti strainer, and then what comes out of the other end is edible. It's what's good.
Yeah, it's like we get
sauce.
paid to make things up, and I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever. How do we get so lucky?
Exactly. Now, how do I segue into this? The universe and the earth and everything like that. I know you're very passionate about certain causes, and it lends itself perfectly to Geek Therapy Radio, because I talk about these things a lot on the show. I'm a big-time geek about solar panels and wind energy and renewables. So what are the causes that you are a part of and proud of?
Well, on the last tour in particular, I took out an organization called Plus One, which I'm sure you've heard of. Mm-hmm. They work with a lot of bands, and it basically allows bands and artists to contribute $1 from every ticket to a cause of their choice. And they have this whole list of organizations they work with. And I, in particular, picked environmental causes for this tour because it's obviously something that means a lot to me. My dad's an architect specializing in green architecture, so I was raised with an understanding of how important it is to maintain and sort of move forward in taking care of Earth. And that's what the comic touches on as well. Comic is like a post-apocalyptic dystopian future comic where we've like abused the Earth until there's only one city left, and yet they still continue to take. So there's undertones of environmental commentary within the comic. So it became kind of an important thing to talk about during the show. So I took out, so the cause we were contributing to for all the United States states was called Grid Alternatives, and basically they install solar panels in underserved communities. So they create jobs, and they basically will take underserved subdivisions and make them off the grid in terms of their power. And it's just awesome to see. I visited some sites, and it's just a really cool. Like everyone's so passionate about what they do, and care a lot about the earth and the people that they work with. It's just really nice to see that exists in our world, and they have to work hard to pay for what they do for people and for the earth. So whatever anyone can do to contribute to that is great. And we ended up raising like $25,000 over the course of the tour for it.
Wow.
And in Canada, we worked with Ecoterre, which is an organization that's kind of working with governments to make sure that we're keeping toxins out of the workplace and basically keeping the workplace clean so that we're not contributing to any toxins that are going back into the earth, and just making sure we're living in a greener, safer environment.
That's really, really wonderful. It's great to be doing something so great with music. You know, you're affecting a lot of people with the music, but then be able to actually turn around and do something good for, in this case, the earth and the environment with it. Would you say that it's kind of, I don't want. It's not like a duty that we must do, but it's like I feel like I'm happy to reciprocate. You know, what did John Lennon or whoever was it, Paul McCartney, the love you make is equal to the love you take, or something like that. It's like it's easy to give back.
If you can, yeah. And I think it's easy to be disheartened about trying to make a difference, especially when it comes to environmental stuff, because you think, oh, whatever, my pop can or my bottle, my water bottle isn't going to make a difference. But so it's easy to think that maybe if you don't contribute, that no one will notice.
Yeah.
But it's that mentality is sort of the wrong angle, and you
right.
do whatever you can with the power that you have to make a difference. And if everyone did that, we would be off to a much less dystopian future.
Exactly. Exactly. That's so. If you know, like you said, we think about this one water bottle or this one Coke can or whatever, but that you think you're just one person. How does my one thing affect that? But if a million people think that way, that's a million.
That's the problem, right? Yeah,
exactly. And it doesn't
bigger. We have to think more collectively.
Exactly, and it doesn't take much effort to just put it, you know, in the trash or put it in the recycling can or do something more effective with it. It's kind of funny. Side note, I don't know if you've been following the new. I don't get political at all on the show. I don't like to. There's already too much of that. Mine's the oasis in that little desert of politics. But
sure.
we've been freaking out over here about plastic straws. And more cities are banning
them everywhere.
So I'm sure it's happening in Canada too. You're in Canada, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So somebody brought up a good point of, well, you're freaking out about plastic straws, but no one said a word about plastic water bottles. And I'm like, you know, that's not the right kind of mentality to have.
People have been talking about plastic water bottles for years, though. I mean, on our tour and especially on stage, we always use reusable metal bottles.
Yeah.
They look cooler and they can be reused. I've always reused bottles, and I think the water bottle discussion has been going on for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
It's still an issue, but I don't think straws have been a contender in the issue until recently, and people are realizing the damage that they're doing, not just because of the plastics, but because of their shape.
Yeah.
And just the damage they're doing as a result of that. I think it's awesome that people are trying to move towards, especially big organizations. I think it's one thing when the individual works towards a difference, but it's another thing when a huge company like Starbucks moves towards an initiative like that. That can influence more than you think.
Yeah.
And just making that decision, there's naysayers, everything. Oh, what about the lids? Well, the lids are actually more biodegradable than the plastic straws,
right?
And they're a different shape and they're easier to recycle.
So the point is, and all I was trying to make is that you do something good, someone's doing something good, and there's always going to be some saying, well, what about...
There's always going to be naysayers.
The other stuff. Like, okay, we shouldn't address plastic straws because plastic bottles still exist. Like, let's, progress
yeah, that's just the worst thinking. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Like, that's something I've learned over the years is, like, there's always going to be a negative Nancy trying to make you feel bad about doing something great. So you know what? That becomes white noise in the end.
And it lets you.
You should try you should look at my comments on Instagram sometimes.
Oh my goodness!
You know what I mean? You just can't focus on that stuff. You have to at least set your goals and then work towards that, and everything else is white noise.
And I always take it as if you're trying to do anything in the public spotlight, whether it's a radio show or a YouTube channel, or sometimes it's both. In my case, my girlfriend says I put an L in both. Both.
Both. I know some people do that. There is
okay.
a smell, but you made it sound like it. You know what? It's creative.
All I'm saying is the negative Nancy's. I'm not calling my girlfriend negative Nancy. I'm just saying negative Nancy's like in the comment sections. That lets you know that you're on the right track. Because if you're not,
people can see you. It's visibility. That means that you're shaking people up a little bit, and they're taking time out of their day. I always look at it like that. People are investing their time in watching your videos. Mm-hmm. That's an investment that they've made into your life.
Right.
That you know what? That's all you can ask for.
Right.
They've spent time on the content you've made, and you're doing your job.
Yeah. And so with Geek Therapy Radio, I haven't heard really much any negativity, because I've heard it once or twice. Oh, I don't know. I'm not going to get into it, but the point is, like, the more I see a depressed person is, because I think where a lot of this negativity comes out of is someone who's been depressed, who may have not had a voice or an advocate. That's why I call this geek therapy radio, because for a long time I think geeks has been a quote unquote negative term, but now in 2018 I think I say geeks are sexy, and we're all geeks about something, whether you're into muscle cars or airplanes or art or music or whatever you're into. We're all geeks about something. So whenever maybe I shouldn't engage them so much one-on-one, but if I see someone being super negative, I'm just like, what's going on, brother?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, half the time it's somebody who is just looking for attention, who's just being a troll.
Yeah.
And then half the time, it's probably someone who truly like overthinks everything and maybe does authentically take issue with it, but that's just because they have their own set of issues and can't seem to put their feet into other people's shoes. And I think feeling empathy is a really tricky one on the internet, right? Because it's hard for you to imagine that person as being a real person,
right? And
you can't imagine how they'd feel on the other end of it. So you can really never take it for a grain of salt. I think another thing to keep in mind too, if you're putting stuff in the public eye, is all the overly positive stuff is only as real as it is too. Like, if someone says, "Oh my God, I love you," chances are, like, you know, they don't mean that as much as it looks, right? Like, they're not going to save you first over their family.
Right.
So, like, you have to take everything for a grain of salt.
Yeah.
And not let the overly positive stuff affect you too much either, because that can cause as much damage in a lot of ways.
I was listening to, it's someone I very much respect. It's someone whose music I'm not super into, but someone I've respect. Marilyn Manson. He's a very smart, articulate
smart guy.
person, and I was listening to him recently. He was saying, everything what we're doing on stage, maybe at least as far as what he's doing, he says that hour-long set, hour-and-a-half-long set, 40-minute set, whatever, that's 40 minutes, an hour and a half of seduction. That's us, like, seducing the crowd, because that's just the stage, that's just the image, because off the stage, it's your real people, and how do you affect the world in a real way. And if you're on stage and people are saying, "We love you," well, do they really know you? Like what you're saying is, it's not love like you love your mom or your daughter or your siblings or something like that. Yeah. And I think admiration. And I think a lot of people, artists and musicians, and I know one of my friends struggle with this. He'd be playing for 100,000 people or whatever, and then he'd call me from the hotel room just to talk to a friend, because he's like, once it's 100,000 people who say they love you and everything, but he doesn't know them, they don't know him. And
it's not a real relationship.
Right. And
I'll spend all day commenting like "I love you" on Drake photos, right? but I mean, obviously, I do love Drake, but I mean, I don't love him. I don't love him as a person. I don't know. Right. I love who Drake is online, and that's like all I know, right? That's all I can love.
Right.
I don't know any more than that, but I do love Drake.
Exactly. We can go back and forth about that for a long time. I want to move the ball forward a little bit. I'm sure it sounds like I could talk to you for like 2 hours on here easily, but I know your time is short here. I guess on this topic, what would you have any advice for? I wrote down here struggling geeks and artists, like maybe someone who's creative or they haven't found what they're creative about yet. Someone who's kind of coming up in life, or maybe they're a teenager or a young adult and they're just kind of struggling. Would you have any advice for them as far as, things to help them through? I say that they should find a hobby. That's one reason I started my show, is to find a hobby. But
try things. I think we're so afraid of the process of learning, because we were raised to think it's so laborious, and that when you're in the mid stages of learning something, people might hate what you do, and it might deter you from trying to get better at it. But the reality is, we all have this dream in our head of what we want to do, or things we've always wanted to accomplish, and we just kind of pass it off to the next day because we don't know if we're really capable of it. And I'm going to take it back to the comics for a sec. I have loved comics for years. I've been a fan of comics. And it's been a dream of mine to be a creator, but I would always, in my heart of hearts, be like, I'm not a creator. I don't know how to make comics. I'm just going to always be a reader and wish that I could make a comic. And I've always done art and stuff, but, never even considered going into it. And one day it kind of something twisted and said, why don't you try? Why don't you put some effort in and read some books and get some software and learn how to do it? And with that determination, and with YouTube University, dude, you can learn anything on YouTube.
10 videos and you're expert.
Totally. A few webinar tutorials later, I was like on the road to, I'm shortening the process, but it happened within a year, and I'm a published author that has a 170-page graphic novel in bookstores.
Yes.
And the comic I'm really proud of, and it's amazing what you can accomplish if you put the effort in.
Yeah.
So I think that literally the distance from our heads to come to fulfilling of our dreams is just work.
Yeah.
So just work. I think a lot of people have this fantasy about creativity and inspiration that it's just going to strike you and you're going to be good at something.
Right.
Or that it's just going to strike you and you're going to be a painter overnight, or and it just happens. You have to let it happen. Well, no, you have to work for it.
Right.
So don't be lazy.
Yeah.
Don't wait for your talent to show up. You have to work for it.
Yeah.
Go put the effort in. I spent 10 hours a day drawing this comic, and it took me a year, but I did it, right?
Yeah.
So, and I did something that I've always dreamed of. So I think that's, it's not sweet or romantic or anything, but you really just have to work.
Yes.
To work, and you'll be good. You'll be amazed what you can accomplish.
I 100% agree. Back early 2000s, you're saying hard work and working. You're doing this for 10 hours, and you don't know if the payoff is going to be there or not. But
who cares if there's a payoff? That's
exactly.
If it's something you've always wanted, then do it.
Exactly. The journey is what is what's therapeutic about it. When you
totally therapeutic.
Yes, when you don't have a job, I was depressed because I didn't have a job for a couple years. I was freelancing, and I discovered that freelancing was 1,000 times worse than having a job. But I was like, you know what? I'm not depressed when I'm working. So that's kind of good advice. Find some hobby that you might be interested in, but don't have these rose-colored glasses like you're just going to wake up and be good at art. Do the work, because the work is the satisfaction in itself.
Work is and as long as you're working on something you love, the work is actually going to be really enjoyable. And I will say I enjoyed every minute of working on this comic, even when it was a grind, and even when I was tired or whatever. But I think I think something to keep in mind is you just have to put the energy in, and you have to try.
Yes.
Just try it.
Okay, Lights, we're starting to wrap things up here. Real quick, not real quick, you can take as much time as you want, but what do you want to plug? Officially plug your comic and your music and anything else you want to plug.
Yeah, well, Skin and Earth, the whole project, it's a record, it's a graphic novel, it's 6 issues of a comic if you want to get them separate. It's like this immersive, awesome multimedia experience, and you can get it at bookstores, comic shops. I'm at Lights on all social media, so all the information's all there. And go take it in and enjoy it. Each song is a chapter, and it's going to be a TV show someday, which is crazy. So lots more to come with Skin and Earth. It's just the beginning. I'm going to want updates on that in the future. Hopefully I'll have you back on Geek Therapy Radio if you're down for it. That. We'll be back. You guys are in Texas, right? Yeah, Houston. We love playing. I love playing in Texas. I love touring down there. We actually just played there a couple months ago. I know. I was there. We'll be back at some point. Were you there? I was there. I was way in the back. Oh, yeah. What? Hey, Lights, it's Johnny. Know me? No. But well, that's awesome. We'll be back again for sure. Awesome. Okay. Now, I usually put bump music at the end of my segments here, and I want to play an entire song of yours if I can. And if so, if I can play an entire song out of this segment, what do you think it should be out of your catalog? Oh, you should put on skydiving. Skydiving. First song segment of Skin and Earth. Okay, skydiving. You're probably going to start hearing it under our voices now. It's going to be pretty cool. So skydiving. it's by Lights. Lights. Thank you from the bottom of my geek heart for being on Geek Therapy Radio. For talking to me. Awesome. And having such a great concept for a show and being able to talk about these kind of things that a lot of people don't. I appreciate that. Yeah, no problem. Lights, thank you for being on Geek Therapy Radio. Thank you. I'll talk to you next time when I come through again. It all starts here with the rush of blood to the head, and I feel no fear, and nothing's happening yet. You pull me in. I'm doing things I never would do. My pulse racing. I'm coming alive with you. Free fall with me. Get a little unruly. No guts, no glory. You said to me, get a little unruly. No guts, no glory. You got me skydiving.
my hands away from you. And I'm all in. It's too late to turn around. Adrenaline is taking my body now. Free fall with me. Get a little unruly. No guts, no glory. You got me skydiving. You got me high flying. I'm jumping off with the world now. Never stop, never slow down. Skydiving. I'm going down, 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 down. I'm going down, 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 down. I'm going down, 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 down. I'm going skydiving. Boy, you're leaving a mark on me, diving into me so slowly, always making it so easy to convince me. Boy, you're leaving a mark on me, diving into me so slowly, always making it so easy to convince me. You got me skydiving. You got me high flying. I'm jumping off with the world now. Never stop, never slow down. Skydiving. I'm going down, 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 down. I'm going down, 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 down. I'm going down, 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 down. I'm going skydiving. I'm going down.
Who among us doesn't love great beer, amazing food, and arcade games? That's why I'm stoked beyond geek belief to tell you about Kung Fu Saloon, located at 5317 Washington Avenue, right here in Houston. Kung Fu Saloon on Washington Avenue has the geek trinity covered, and then some. Of course, they have the most excellent beer on tap, the nomiest food off the grill, and the vintage arcade games we love. But you can also get your Tay-Tay on with karaoke, your super fan on with televised sports, and your rug cut to the best music and DJs on Washington Avenue. In addition to arcade games, get your competitive fix with Giant Jenga, Giant Connect 4, 3 skee-ball lanes, shuffleboard, and foosball. Get your drink, food, game, karaoke, and dance on. Or step to Street Fighter 2 with me and get your geek fanny served. Hadouken! Kung Fu Saloon, 5317 Washington Avenue. Visit www.kungfusaloonhouston.com for more details and dress code info. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. I really hope you enjoyed the interview in that previous segment with Lights. I want to, I don't mean to brag or anything, but I bet you did. I don't think I'm being overly confident in that assumption. It was a great interview. I think, how long was it? It was about 16 minutes. So it was a good length that I was able to keep for the broadcast. Now, I bring that up because that actual interview was over 30 minutes long. We talked about Michael Jackson. We talked about other fun stuff, a lot of really helpful stuff, a lot of background stuff, a lot of things that are really going to help any musicians and artists out there. We talked about how the industry works, how you know you're on the right path when people try to bring you down, all the trolls on the internet and stuff. We talked about all sorts of neat things. That's on the podcast. So the broadcast interview, like I said, was around 16 minutes. If you subscribe to the podcast, you'll hear the whole shebang. I think it was like 35 minutes, including the song that I played there at the end. So make sure you are subscribed to Geek Therapy Radio with Johnny Hemberger so you don't miss any of that. I said meat and potatoes a few times in that interview. There's so much good meat on the bones of that interview. And that's not just for Lights. Other people I have on the show, there's some times where I have to trim for time. I'm only allowed 45 minutes currently of actual show content to go on the air. But with the podcast, it's unlimited. So make sure you're subscribed to Geek Therapy Radio with Johnny Hemberger. Now, with that out of the way, also, one more time, my eternal thanks to Lights for coming on here. But let's move on to some more fun stuff. We're going to talk about some video games and Tesla here in this segment. Quick side note, did you see that Apple is now worth $1 trillion? Trillion with a T. They are worth the most. They are the business that's worth the most money. Highest valued business in United States history. $1 trillion. Do you remember, and I promise we're going to get onto Teslas and video games and stuff in a second, but do you remember the movie Contact? I think it was Jodie Foster. I remember back in the day, they had to build that big wormhole generation machine that was like as big as an island. It was this huge contraption, and they built it. And I remember having my mind blown, not by the movie itself, which was wonderful. I highly recommend Contact. Is it called Contact? It's the one with Jodie Foster. Anyways, I remember my mind was blown back then when they said, how much does this machine cost? And they said, well, it's going to cost a lot of taxpayer money. We have secret money for this kind of stuff or whatever. And it costs $250 billion. And I was doing the math in my little head. I was like, $250 billion? That's like more money than anyone has ever generated in history of humankind. That's got to be a significant chunk of the U.S. economy. I couldn't wrap my brain around what $250 billion was. So the fact that they were in this movie, a made-up device cost $250 billion. Apple could build 4 of them. That's a way oversimplification. It's not like Apple has $1 trillion just to withdraw from the bank to buy wormhole devices. That being said, I think it's a good segue into Tesla, because I think if Elon Musk had $1 trillion, he might try to open a wormhole. And that sounds crazy, but that's not far-fetched. He'd probably just get on his Twitter, yo, I opened a wormhole. And that's probably how the tweet would go. I know the president would probably tweet out something 5 pages long to say the same thing, but Elon Musk would be like, a wormhole, I built 2 of them. 2 wormholes, come hop in. All you have to do is put down a deposit on a Tesla and you get first dibs to drive it through this wormhole. I'm getting so far off base, but that's what we do here on Geek Therapy Radio. Speaking of Tesla and video games, Elon Musk casually tweeted the other day that he's looking for game developers. And you might be thinking, why does Elon Musk need to hire video game developers? What new company is he working on? That was the first thing that came to my head. Elon Musk hiring video game developers. I thought that he might be opening up a development studio or something. Because he has the Boring Company, which is making tunnels underground for transportation. He has SpaceX, which is for space, Tesla, which is the cars and everything. Quick side note, Elon Musk made his first nut with PayPal. He invented PayPal, him and someone else, but he cashed out of PayPal, and that's where he got his initial millions and millions of dollars. So Elon Musk got rich with PayPal. But back to Tesla and why Elon Musk would be wanting to hire game designers. Well, I'm about to tell you, and it sounds initially on paper like a horrible idea. And basically, that is that Musk wants to put video games into his Tesla cars. Model X, Model S, Model 3, any future cars. You know that the Tesla cars have this big, beautiful touchscreen in there. It's a very minimalist cockpit other than the big, giant touchscreen in there. It's like a massive tablet. There's no dials, there's no gauges. That's what you have, and that's how you can change air conditioning. That's how you can change different features of the car. It's all there. So old Muskie wants to put video games in these cars. And again, that sounds so terrible on paper. Why in the Sam hell of hells would you need to put video games in the infotainment of a car? And I know the first question you're all thinking, because it's the first question I thought after realizing why he wanted video games in cars, why he wanted to hire game developers. This will be disabled if the car is moving. Obviously, you will not be able to play video games on the touchscreen of the car while you're cruising down the highway in quote-unquote autopilot mode. Which, by the way, Elon, if you ever come across this, stop calling it autopilot. That's not what it is. Just call it cruise control pacing and lane assist and whatever. well, you can call it whatever, just don't call it autopilot. People, when you say autopilot, it makes dummies think that they can just press a button and sit back and relax and play Donkey Kong while their car goes careening into a divider, which has happened without the driver playing video games. But Tesla has been in hot water with a few very high profile crashes that while the driver had autopilot enabled. So one way I think to help this issue is to stop calling it autopilot. And if anything you take from this, don't allow the games to be played in autopilot. But anyways, it's going to be disabled while the car is moving. You will not be able to play one of the 3 games that he's announced so far. He's hiring on developers, but so far with the next over-the-air update to Teslas, they're going to get 3 Atari games as kind of Easter eggs, and those are Tempest, Missile Command, and Pole Position. You might be thinking, okay, that's really cool, but how does this all work? How is someone going to be able to actually play the game? Well, it's kind of neat. When the car is still and not moving and in park and handbrake on or whatever is in a Tesla, I've never driven a Tesla, but when it's not moving, when it's stationary, you're going to be able to control the game, let's say pole position, with the steering wheel. There's buttons and stuff on the actual steering wheel, so imagine playing pole position in your car, looking at the big screen, and you're steering the F1 car. Pole position is an old 80s F1 racing game, but you're actually steering the car on the screen with the actual steering wheel in the Tesla. That is just about the coolest thing I've ever heard this week. That's pretty cool. The next question I would have is, well, what about your tires? If you're sitting there and you're jerking the wheel around, what about you're just wearing out the treads on your tires? The car's not moving, you're just wearing a flat spot into your tires. No, it'll be disconnected, and it's not like the wheel's going to go from lock to lock position when you're playing these games. It's just going to be a few inches left or right that you're going to be able to move the wheel, and that's going to be more than enough to steer the car on the screen without engaging the wheels on the I was about to say tarmac. It's not tarmac. It's not an aircraft carrier. You're not driving on runways usually. You're not going to wear out the tires in your driveway. You can also set the car in, I think it's called tailgate mode, which in general kind of allows you to run the air conditioning, allows you to run the stereo system, or will allow you to play these games on the screen. And more interestingly enough to me, when it's in that mode, tailgate mode, you can run the AC and stay comfortable in that car for Tesla claims up to 48 hours. I didn't see what they specified as the 48-hour car. It's probably the Model X with the biggest battery. But that'd be cool. Let's say you're camping and your significant other, I won't say your girlfriend or your wife, it could be your boyfriend complaining. There's a lot of wimpies out there now. It might be me too. I might be going camping and it's 100 degrees outside, still mosquitoes biting. I'm going to go lay in the Tesla with the AC running, and I'll know that I'll be able to do that for about 48 hours. So that's really, really cool. That's really cool news coming from Tesla. But Elon Musk is a person who kind of does that. He may have just had this thought sitting on the toilet that morning. I'm going to put games in my Teslas. Put out a tweet looking for game developers and telling his team, his IT department basically, hey, put 3 Easter eggs in the next OTA update. Put Tempest and Missile Command and Pole Position in there just to start. That's really cool. But I was going to go back to say real quick to end this segment. Actually, not to end this segment because I still have to talk about Mario Kart. How I said that this feature would be disabled if you're moving, like you're not going to be able to play games when you're moving. People are going to figure out a way around that. People have already figured out ways around that in their car. My car, you can play DVDs in the car. I can pop in The Hangover. Ever since I've had my car, I've had it for almost 5 or 6 years now. The only DVD that's ever been in there, because I've been too lazy to pull it out the one day I was testing it, was the first Hangover DVD. It might be a red box. Oh, crap. 6 years, is there any? Anyways, it might not be. I don't know. Anyways, it might be. Anyways. So, when you pull up to a stoplight, the screen comes on and you can see what's going on on the screen. You can see Zach Galifianakis being himself. But as soon as the wheels even slightly rotate, like you take your foot off the brake pretty much, the screen goes black and all you can hear is the audio. Now, apparently there's an easy way to bypass that, and that's my point. Other people do it. You see them cruising down the highway with big-ass screens in their dashboard. I'm not talking about the kids in the backseat watching them flip down monitors. I'm talking like there's screens in the front driver's seat, and they're watching God knows what up there. So the practical side, the safe side of me is saying, like, Elon, we're cool if you don't put video games in a Tesla. Like, it's cool by itself. We're cool if you don't put that temptation in there. But the other part of me is like, that's cool as hell. That's the coolest thing in the world. I would love to put an Android, I was about to say tape deck, an Android head unit in my car and play Mario in the parking lot or at work before work or something. That'd be neat. My mind is just going off on these possibilities. Don't play video games in your car. Elon Musk, figure out a way so people can't bypass the stationary rule of that video game system. Not Donkey Kong. Mario Kart. Mario Kart has a VR exhibit, VR demonstration in London right now. And at first I was like, nah, it's kind of cool. But then the more I thought about it, and by more I thought about it, I mean 3 seconds after I initially thought about it, I was like, that's the coolest thing in the world. Looking around you, holding a red shell, and tossing it. You can toss a red shell behind you. You can toss a red shell. You can toss most any item before in front of you or behind you. Let's use a banana peel. A banana peel. You could toss that nanner peel right behind you and see who you're throwing it at in VR. Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. Mario Kart VR. It's interesting that it was on an HTC Vive. So Nintendo had to strike some sort of agreement. You'd think it would be on a Nintendo. Like, the Switch isn't powerful enough to do VR, arguably, quote unquote. So they had to use some more powerful hardware to do this, which brings the whole emulation thing into play. And is it possible that we could possibly get a Nintendo game like on Steam? I kind of alluded to that a while back. What if Nintendo made a store on Steam and just leaned into this emulator thing and said, screw that, we're just going to own all the emulation. People will buy if we make it easier to purchase and download the game, people will stop pirating the games, which is a big thing going on with Nintendo now. Anyways, Mario Kart VR. I really want to play that. Really, really want to play that. And if there's ever a demo that comes to anywhere near Houston, I will hopefully be all over that, because that sounds cool. More Geek Therapy Radio to come. What else are we going to talk about here? I guess you'll just have to find out. Unless you're listening to the podcast, you can just look below in the description. But yeah, we'll be right back with more Geek Therapy Radio. I can't talk. We'll be right back with more Geek Therapy Radio. I'm your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. If you're listening on the radio, we'll be back in just a couple minutes. If you're listening to the podcast, we'll be back virtually instantly. So don't go anywhere. Grab a snack. Grab a beer if you're of age. Turn on a video game if you're listening to the podcast. It's really cool listening to podcasts while you're playing video games. Just so get all that set up in the break, and I will see you in just a minute. I'm Johnny Hemberger. We will be right back. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. I'm Johnny Hemberger, your mental curator, and I remembered what I wanted to touch on. I actually thought about making this a midweek geek this week, but instead, what did I make a midweek geek about this week? Oh yeah, I just remembered. It's kind of lowbrow. Basically, farting in your car is terraforming. So if we just collected all of our toots and sent them to Mars in little glass jars, then we could terraform Mars, because the carbon dioxide and the greenhouse gases in our toots could rebuild the atmosphere. This is actually a good plug for Midweek Geek. It's not actually about toots, not completely. It's very minimally about toots. That's just kind of the tag I gave it. It was about terraforming Mars, and that terraforming Mars has a tendency to be a lot more difficult than we initially think in our first shower thoughts. Maybe I'll spoil it a little bit here. Basically, it all spurred by I read something that Elon Musk said, we could start terraforming Mars, we can start building the atmosphere on Mars if we just nuked the ice caps on Mars and unlocked all the carbon dioxide and water and everything locked in those ice caps. I was like, well, maybe nuking another planet isn't the most ethical thing in the entire universe, but let's say that it's mathematically possible, not just with the ice on Mars, but by collecting enough greenhouse gases from, directing meteors and comets and stuff to hit Mars. Basically, bring all the ingredients for an atmosphere by redirecting comets to all collect and hit on Mars. Let's say we were able to make that happen. We brought enough gases back to the surface of Mars to bring the atmosphere back up from 0.6, the atmospheric pressure of Earth. And we brought the atmospheric pressure up, and we brought the greenhouse gases up so that it would actually collect solar energy and warm the planet, equalize the climate of the planet. Let's say we did all that. Let's say we got the climate perfect. And this is a spoiler alert for that midweek geek that I released this week. All of that atmosphere will blow away without a magnetic field, which Mars has none, or almost none. That's why the atmosphere left in the first place. The Earth has a magnetic field that protects us from solar radiation and cosmic radiation and solar wind and cosmic wind. If we were able to somehow build an atmosphere on Mars, it would all blow away again like a dandelion unless we figure out how to regenerate that magnetic field around Mars. And the way Earth's magnetic field works is our molten iron core turns around and spins and basically creates a magnet, a big magnet in there, north and a south pole, and that's what causes aurora borealis and all other phenomenon. But basically, our Earth is protected by that because our iron core makes the magnet and creates a magnetic field. Mars, to our knowledge, doesn't have a molten core, or at least not a molten iron core spinning around like the Earth does anymore. It's speculated that maybe it did in the past, but now it doesn't. So unless we figure that out, terraforming is just a very intricate shower thought that is dashed in one way or the other. But I do remember what I want to talk about in this segment, even though I spent half of it talking about terraforming Mars, which is great in itself. I want to talk about completely different subject. CPUs, the processors in your computer. The i9, I'm talking about the mobile version of the Core i9, Intel Core i9 processor, 6 cores, 12 threads. It is a beast of a chip. And I wanted to talk about a little bit how it all goes back to last week in the MacBook Pro 2018 issue, which I initially said it was scammy. I said outright that Apple was trying to scam you with it, because they tried to cram a big beefy Core i9 chip into an ultra thin and light device that they knew would not be able to handle it, that was throttling below base clock. And it just kind of got me thinking, because no, Apple is not alone in that. Other manufacturers have put the i9 into their thin and light devices, and I think it was just too soon. This is a case of just too soon. The thermal design of these devices can't handle such a beefy chip. And in this quest to make all these powerful professional devices thinner and thinner and thinner, these gaming devices thinner and thinner and thinner, it's like what Malcolm said in Jurassic Park. Everyone thought that they could, but no one stopped to think if they should. So I think that's where we're at with the Core i9 processors in laptops right now. Am I talking differently? Because I'm in the apartment and it's kind of late and I don't want to wake up neighbors. Anyways, there's nothing wrong with putting the Core i9 mobile CPU into mobile devices, obviously, just as long as it can handle it. In the MacBook Pro's case, you're paying hundreds of dollars of a premium to have an i9 in there, and you're getting marginally better performance than the i7. That's hundreds of dollars cheaper. Marginally, if any, and in a lot of tests, you get less. It performs worse. The better chip, quote unquote, performs worse than the lower tier chip. So hopefully the 2019 MacBook Pro will be a little bit better optimized to cool such a beefy processor. 2018 was just a little too soon for thin and lights to have an i9, and I think, and I make the argument, and lots of people in this tech blogosphere agree that we're okay with the 2019 MacBook Pro being a little bit thicker as long as it incorporates an adequate cooling solution for the processors they use. Stop advertising that it can turbo boost to 4.8 gigahertz. You ain't never hitting that. You're never going to hit those advertised clock speeds, especially in professional workloads and applications. You're not. So 2018, especially in Apple's case, and I pick on Apple because if you bought a PC, a thin and light PC with an i9, you have 1,000 different models to choose from that have an i9 in it, and you can stay using Windows. If you need to keep using Mac OS, there's only one option with the i9 in it, and it's worse performance than the i7 of the base models in some tests. I just think, to sum up, the i9 is a little bit too soon in 2018. But we will be right back with one more segment of Geek Therapy Radio. Don't go anywhere. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. I'll see you in just a second here. I've got a treat for you. Stick around. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio, and I am already smiling because of the outro song I have scheduled for the show this evening. Right off the bat, it's by a band called RMB, and you can follow them all over social media, including Facebook. It's at We Are RMB, so WEARE at We Are RMB. They apparently like Sunny in Philadelphia as much as I do. My favorite character on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, by the way, is Dennis, and that may sound odd, but to watch how his character has devolved over the seasons is just magical genius. He is a sociopath, he's a psychopath, and I know that sounds weird. It really weirds Sarah out that I say that Dennis is my favorite character on there because he's such a sociopath, but it's because he gets his comeuppance every time. He thinks he can manipulate, but he always winds up screwing himself over worse and worse and worse. That's why it's funny to me. We all know these people in our lives who try to manipulate us and try to get one over on us, but I like Sunny because that type of person in that show always gets screwed, and I like that. So RMB at We Are RMB, obviously like Sunny in Philadelphia as much as I do. That's going to do it for this episode of Geek Therapy Radio. My eternal thanks to Lights for coming on the show. If you're just tuning into the Geek Therapy Radio broadcast, Lights was my guest, so make sure you're subscribed to the Geek Therapy Radio podcast and be good to each other, starting with yourselves. We feel like we can't change the world, but we can change our world just by being good to ourselves and being good to those around us. So that is effective change that we can take to the bank. On the way out here, RMB is gonna blast your eardrums with the best cover of Dayman I've ever heard. I'm Johnny Hemberger. Thank you for sticking with me. I'll see you next week on Geek Therapy Radio.
Dayman, fighter of the night man, champion of the sun, master of karate, and friendship for everyone. Dayman, fighter of the night man, champion of the sun, master of karate, and friendship for everyone. Master of karate and friendship for